Hi guys, I am Sunil Desai and you are watching Galaxy Online Learning. So now we are studying history of 10th CBSE and we are studying the second chapter, that is nationalism in India. So in the last lecture what we saw was that the different groups in India, they joined the civil disobedience movement. But the reason for joining of this group was different. The aspirations were different. Okay, but there were certain groups. Let us now come to the limits of the civil disobedience movement. There were certain groups who did not take part in this movement. We saw that the people living in the cities or towns, they took part on a large scale. The peasants took part. Then we saw tribals taking part. We saw plantation workers taking part. We saw then industrialists taking part. We saw jamindars taking part, traders taking part. We saw industrial workers taking part. But still there were certain groups who were not moved by the abstract concept of Swaraj. And one such group was of the untouchables. See, these untouchables from 1930s has started to call them as Dalits or the oppressed. For a long time, the Congress had ignored these Dalits because they had a fear that they might offend the Sanatanis, the conservative upper class Hindus. But Mahatma Gandhi declared that Swaraj would not come for 100 years if untouchability was not eliminated. Unless you eliminate untouchability, independence won't be possible. That's what Gandhiji thought. And he called these untouchables as Harijans, the children of God. He organized satyagraha to secure them entry to temples and access to public wells, public schools, public roads, public tanks. Gandhiji himself cleaned toilets to dignify the work of a bhangi or the sweeper. So, to show that that work is also a dignified work, he himself cleaned toilets and he persuaded the upper caste to change their heart and give up the sin of untouchability. But many Dalit leaders were keen on a different political solution to the problems of community. Many Dalit leaders, they thought that Congress can't give them solutions for the troubles of their community. So these leaders, they started to begin organizing themselves. Okay, they began organizing themselves, demanding what they demanded. They demanded reserved seats in the educational institutions, then separate electorate that would choose their own representative for the legislative council. Political empowerment, they believed, would be possible only if one of their representatives becomes a member of the council, and only if the Dalit. Therefore, we saw that Dalit participation in the civil disobedience movement was very less. Particularly, it was very less in Maharashtra and the Nagpur region, where the organization of the Dalits was very strong. Now, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who organized the Dalits into the Depressed Class Association in 1930, he clashed with Mahatma Gandhi at the second roundtable conference. Babasaheb Ambedkar demanded separate electorates for Dalits, and Gandhiji was not ready for that. And when the British government conceded to the demand of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, Gandhiji went on fast unto death. What Gandhiji believed that was, if you give separate electorates to the Dalits, they will get more alienated from the main community. They won't get mixed up in the main community. Okay? So, in the society, Ambedkar ultimately accepted Gandhiji's demand, Gandhiji's position, and then a pact was signed between Ambedkar, Baba Sahib Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi, and that at Pune, and that's called the Pune Pact, and it was signed in September 1932. Now, according to this Pune Pact, the depressed classes, or the scheduled castes which you call them, for them, reserved seats in provincial and central legislative councils were granted. Though they have to be voted in the general electorate. There was no separate electorate for the Dalits. They will get reserved seats in the council as well as the central assembly, but they have to fight the elections in the general electorate. The Dalit movement, however, was a bit apprehensive about the Congress-led national movement. Similarly, about the Muslims. The Muslim political organizations were also lukewarm in their response to the civil disobedience movement. After the decline of non-Congress and the Khilafat movement, many Muslims, they got alienated from the Congress. So from the mid-1920s, the Congress came to be more visibly associated with a Hindu religious nationalist group, mainly the Hindu Mahasabha. So the relations between Hindus and the Muslims worsened. Both these communities started getting alienated from each other more and more. Okay. Each community, the Hindu community as well as the Muslim community, started organizing religious processions with militant fervor. Okay, this resulted in Hindu-Muslim communal clashes and riots in various cities. Every riot deepened the distance between both Hindu and the Muslims. The Congress and the Muslim League tried to renegotiate. Okay, they put in efforts to renegotiate an alliance, and in 1927, it appeared that such a unity could be forged. Okay, the important differences were over the question of representation in the council, in the legislative council and the assemblies. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was one of the Muslim leaders, was willing to give up the demand of separate electorate if he said, okay, we are not interested in getting separate electorate, but you should give reserved seats to us in the Central Assembly as well as the Legislative Council, depending upon the proportion of the population in Muslim-dominated provinces, that is Bengal and Punjab. These were the Muslim-dominated provinces of that time. So, negotiations on this were going on, and for that, all parties conference was been kept. Okay, and in the all parties conference in 1928, Mr. M.R. Jaikar, who was the leader of the Hindu Mahasabha, strongly opposed this policy. Okay, so the efforts to compromise came to an end. So when the civil disobedience movement started, there was an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust among the Muslim community. So, alienated from the Congress, the last section of Muslims did not come to fight in this struggle. Many Muslims, leaders and intellectuals, they expressed the concern about the status of the Muslims in the independent state. They feared that the culture and identity of minorities would be submerged under the domination of Hindu majority. So that was one of the limitations why a big section of the people in India didn't take part in the civil disobedience movement, particularly the Muslims and the Dalits. Now let us come to the fourth unit of this chapter, the sense of collective belonging. This sense of collective belonging is very important because if this sense of belonging prevails, then only nationalism will grow. Okay? So, there should be some binding force to bring people together. Okay? No doubt, the united struggle, the people fought together for Swaraj. No doubt this struggle did make people to come together, a bonding between people increased. But there were also a variety of cultural processes through which nationalism captured people's imagination. History and fiction, folklore, folk stories and songs, popular prints and symbols. This played a very important role in bringing the sense of collective belonging. Okay, and thus made nationalism popular, nationalism grow. The identity of the nation is most often symbolized in a figure or image. You know, mostly it is because a nation is an abstract idea. So it is always symbolized in figure or image. Because this helps create an image with which people can identify the nation. So it was in the 20th century, with the growth of nationalism, the identity of India came to virtually associated with the image of Bharat Mata. The image was first created by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. In the 1870s, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay wrote Vande Mataram, a hymn to the motherland. Later, this hymn, Vande Mataram, was included in his novel Anandamath and widely sung during the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. Moved by the Swadeshi movement, Abhindranath Tagore painted his famous image of Bharat Mata. This famous image is shown on the page of your textbook. This is that famous image which Abhindranath Tagore painted of Bharat Mata. Okay? In this painting, what you see is that in this painting, Bharat Mata is portrayed as an ascetic figure. How is she? She is calm, composed, divine and spiritual. In subsequent years, the image of Bharat Mata acquired many different forms as it circulated in popular prints and was painted by different painters, different artists. Devotion to this mother figure came to be seen evidence of one's nationalism. Okay? See, the idea of nationalism also developed through a movement to revive Indian folklore. Indian folklore was in plenty. Folk tales, folk songs. So the national leaders, they started recording folk tales, folk stories. And it was sung by bards and they toured villages to gather folk songs and legends. These tales, they believed, gave a true picture of traditional culture. It was essential to preserve this folk tradition in order to discover one's national identity and restore in the people a sense of pride for their country, for their past. In Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore himself began collecting folk ballads, nursery rhymes, myths, and led the movement for folk revival. In Madras, Netaisa Sastri published a massive 4-volume collection of Tamil folk tales by the name The Folklore of Southern India. He believed that folklore was a national literature. It was the most trustworthy manifestation of people's real thoughts and characteristics. That's what Natesha Sastri taught. As the national movement developed, national leaders became more and more aware of such icons and symbols. During the Swadeshi movement in Bengal, a tricolor flag, three colors, red, green and yellow, was designed. It had 8 lotuses representing 8 provinces. At that time in British India there were 8 different provinces. Okay, so these 8 lotuses represented 8 provinces. India, and there was a crescent moon representing Hindus and Muslims on that flag. By 1921, Gandhiji designed the Swaraj flag. It was again a tricolor, red, green and white. Instead of yellow, it was white, red, green and white. And it had a spinning wheel, the charkha, in the center, representing Gandhian's ideal of self-help. Carrying the flag, holding it aloft during marches became a symbol of defiance. Okay? Another means of creating a feeling of nationalism was through reinterpretation of history. History was reinterpreted. By the end of 19th century, many Indians began feeling that to instill a sense of pride in the nation, Indian history has to be thought about differently, because till then the British historian had changed the Indian history, means they had biased the Indian history. The British saw Indians as a backward and primitive country, backward people, primitive people, incapable of governing themselves. In response, the Indian historians began looking into the past to discover India's great achievements. They wrote about the glorious past, the glorious developments in ancient times, when art and architecture, science and mathematics, religion and culture, law and philosophy, crafts and trade had flourished. This glorious time was before the advent of the Britishers. So the historians felt that because the Britishers came after Britishers, the history of India declined. This nationalist histories urged the readers to take pride in India's great achievements in the past and struggle to change the miserable condition of life in the British rule. These efforts to unify people had a lot of problems too. When the past being glorified was Hindu, when the images celebrated were drawn from Hindu iconography, other community people felt that they were left off. Since Hindus are majority in India, what was happening was that the images which were celebrated were drawn from Hindu mythology. So the other communities, they started feeling that they have been alienated, they have been left off. Now let us review this chapter. So let us come to nationalism and a small review. See, a growing anger against the British rule brought various groups together, the different groups in India together to fight. They came together to fight, on a common struggle. Okay? The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to channel people's grievances. All these different groups had their different problems and they had their different aspirations. Mahatma Gandhi tried to bring their difficult grievances under one struggle, that is Swaraj. But they also joined the Swaraj struggle. But the reason of joining the struggle was different. Through such movements, the nationalists tried to forge a national unity. But as we have seen, diverse groups and classes participated with different aspirations and expectations. As the grievances were wide-ranging, freedom from colonial rule also meant different things for different people. Their difficulties were different, their grievances were different, so they thought Swaraj for them meant a different thing. The Congress continuously attempted to resolve differences and ensure that the demands of one group did not alienate the other, because there used to be clashes between two different groups. If it was beneficial for one group, it used to be unfavorable for the other. Okay? And this is precisely why the unity within the movement often broke down. The high points of Congress activity and nationalist unity were followed by phases of disunity and inner conflict between groups. In other words, what happened was that a nation was emerging, but of many different voices wanting freedom from colonial rule. So, struggle had started, but the struggle had different voices, and these different voices wanted to get freedom from the colonial rule. And with this, we end our chapter number 2, Nationalism in India. Go through the chapter, once again read it, go through the chapter, just see if you are not understanding any term, please WhatsApp me if you have any difficulty. But before that, once again, I remind you, please, those who have not registered yet, please get yourself registered so that you can get your study pack. Already 3 study packs have been given. The 4th and 5th will be coming in a short while. So this will help you to solve, to get your questions and answers. You can go home, by heart these question answers, then you can solve many problems which are textual as well as which have come in the past papers. Okay, so please get yourself registered. Thank you.